Recently, there has been a crying news in China. There is a man surnamed Qin in Chengde, Hebei province. He went to KTV to sing, found a girl to sing with him, and then he was crooked. He asked the girl if she would like to communicate for a fee, but she was rejected. This guy, who doesn't give up, just became an unscrupulous licking dog. In order to please this girl, she directly transferred 1,000 yuan to other people's WeChat, but this girl was indeed rich and not lewd, and finally she didn't agree. Therefore, although Qin transferred the money, nothing actually happened. Forget it. But 5 months later, the KTV was swept away by the local police station because of the paid escort. When punishing these escorts, he pulled out the radish and took out the mud, and found Qin's WeChat transfer record, and then the coquettish operation came. Although there was no actual act of prostitution on both sides at that time, the Chengde police still fined Qin 500 yuan on the grounds of violating the regulations on the administration of public security penalties and suspected of prostitution. They were fined 500 yuan just because they had the idea of whoring. This Qin may be one of the most unjustified clients in China's history. This case is a bit like the famous crime of counter-revolutionary treachery in history. There is a judge in the Supreme Court named He Fan. He once wrote a memoir article, saying that during the Cultural Revolution, there was a young worker who had a spring dream at night and dreamed of having sex with a beautiful female colleague. He was very excited to wake up in the morning. His tone was speechless, and he boasted everywhere in the factory. Even the details of his dream were even clear. The school beauty became more and more widely spread, and it was very unlucky to soon spread to a girl's ears. That girl was a sinful person. In that era, women's reputation was very important. The girl was ashamed of this matter. When she couldn't think about it for a moment, she hanged herself and committed suicide. There was a big deal. This bragging worker was soon arrested by the security section, but how to convict him became a problem. Because although this matter has something to do with him, after all, he just had a dream, boasted a cow, and actually did nothing. At that time, there was a hooliganism in China, but he didn't really play hooligans. That is, he just masturbated. Finally, the court thought for a long time, and the president of the court personally sentenced this person to a 10-year sentence for counter-revolutionary dream treachery. Therefore, Qin, who was fined by Chengde, was lucky that he was not convicted of counter-revolutionary whoring. In fact, Chengde Public Security was fined crazily for one reason. This is not the first time. Last month, a sensational programmer was fined for climbing the wall. It was also a Chengde Public Security programmer who climbed over the wall to work for a Turkish company to write code. As a result, he was confiscated the programmer's hard-earned money of the past 3 years on the grounds of illegally climbing over the wall. Similar to this, there is a woman in Yangtze County, Shandong Province. She recently climbed over the wall to sell clothes and shoes on Facebook. As a result, tens of thousands of yuan she worked hard-earned was also confiscated by the Yangtze County Public Security Bureau in the name of illegally climbing over the wall. These incredible stories can show that China is indeed far ahead of fines. There is an old Chinese saying that there is no profit and no early. What is the motive for this crazy fine of the Public Security Department that is almost open to grab money? During the summer vacation of 1998, that is, when I was in college, according to the regulations of the school, I went to the local Public Security Bureau for an internship during the holiday. Therefore, I went to my hometown Biji Public Security Bureau to practice the internship unit at that time, that is, in the criminal police force. I found an interesting phenomenon, that is, Biji's criminal police force. They are not active in solving cases, but very active in gambling and whoring. As we all know, catching gambling and catching prostitutes are not the main duties of the criminal police, because according to the internal part of the public security, it is the responsibility of the police station and the public security brigade. So why do Biji's criminal police want dogs to take their noses into their noses? In the 2 weeks when I was in the Biji criminal police force, I followed them to grab several gambles and several times there was no exception. The next day, I will receive an envelope containing money, which is actually a legal work rebate. I didn't know until then that I was gambled and whoring. Among the seized gambling and prostitutes, the police can get a 15% financial reward and return it immediately. That is to say, if the police pay 100 yuan for gambling, they can immediately get a reward of 15 yuan. That's why BG's criminal police are so enthusiastic about gambling and prostitutes. I don't know if this kind of confiscation reward is still available, but it was a common phenomenon in China in the 1990s. In my first year of work at the Huangpu Public Security Bureau in Guangzhou, my master told me, "Hey, it's a pity that you are late and missed a good time." Hey, I don't know what it means. My master explained to me that we no longer fight smuggling now and can't make money. Guangzhou Huangpu, also known as the location of the famous Huangpu Military Academy, is an area close to the Pearl River. In the 1990s, Guangzhou's smuggling economy was very developed. All kinds of smuggled goods were smuggled from Hong Kong to Guangzhou through the Pearl River waterway, and Huangpu was one of the most important checkpoints at that time. In order to encourage the police to crack down on smuggling, the customs stipulated that the police could get a 10% reward for confiscated smuggled goods. As you should know, many of the trends at that time were bulk items, such as car wine, watches and electronic products. Sometimes, as soon as it is sent, it is worth hundreds of millions of yuan. After auctioning these smuggled goods, the customs will return 10% of the auction money to the police in Huangpu. At that time, the Huangpu police, under this incentive, tried their best to crack down on smuggling. Every year, there were billions of smuggled goods seized. It can be said that they were rich butter. This is not a metaphor. My master told me that at that time, as long as the customs reward was taken back, he would immediately share the money. And it was no exaggeration to say that he really used sacks to share the money. Later, the anti-smuggling business was transferred to the Anti-Smuggling Bureau of the Customs. The public security has cut off the layoffs, and there is no motivation, and no one has grasped the trend. Of course, I believe there are not many naked ways to share money now, but there must be mutant methods. Otherwise Chengdu public security will not work so hard. What kind of mutant way? For example, according to the performance appraisal regulations, your public security must find how much money every year before you can get the performance reward. In this situation of interest, public security is of course motivated by fines. Having said so much, the reason why Chengdu police's crazy fine must be related to his performance tasks. So who will assign a task to the police? Obviously, according to the public data, Chengdu's local finances, which is famous for fines, are very bad. In 2002, the general public budget revenue of Chengdu city was only 12.4 billion yuan, of which taxes accounted for 67.7 billion yuan, a year-on-year decrease of more than 20%. At the end of 2022, Chengdu's debts totaled 67.8 billion yuan, and 24.4 billion yuan was needed to pay interest alone every year. That is to say, Chengdu's annual tax revenue is more than one-third, not to mention debt repayment. If the interest to be used to pay debts. In this situation where the pot is about to be opened, Chengdu will be fined everywhere for killing chickens and eggs. Chengdu municipal government, the non-tax revenue in 2002 was 57.24 billion yuan, of which the confiscated income was as high as 280 million yuan. You know, the total population of Chengdu city is only 3.35 million. If it is so flat, every citizen of Chengdu has been fined more than 290 yuan. It is really no exaggeration to say that they have been tested for plucking hair. In March this year, Bloomberg once reported that in 2002, the debt ratio of 31 provinces and municipalities directly under the central government in China exceeded 120% of his income. Seriously insolvent. If China's local government is regarded as a company, more than half of the local governments have actually gone bankrupt. Among them, Tianjin, whose debt balance is the most serious, ranking first in China nearly 3 times his comprehensive financial resources. Among them, On the 11th of April this year, the Guizhou provincial government publicly developed a document on the website of his development center, admitting that it was extremely difficult to promote limited debt due to financial level. It cannot be effectively solved by its own ability alone, and I hope the central government will support it. To put it bluntly, it is to admit that you can't pay off your debts, and the situation is even worse now. In August, the famous Goldman Sachs Group estimated that the cumulative debt of China's local governments has reached 94 trillion yuan since this year. Hey, what is the concept of this figure? A few days ago, the total debt of Evergrande Group was 2.44 trillion yuan, and the debt of the local government is equivalent to 40 Evergrande. In fact, the local financial distress can be seen from the salary of civil servants nationwide. A few days ago, a notice from Yangzhou civil servants demanding the removal of performance appraisal in 2002 was uploaded on the internet. This notice clearly requires that by March next year, civil servants in Yangzhou must complete the clearance of the performance award in 2002. Jiangsu Province, where Yangzhou is located, is the second-ranked province in China's economy, second only to Guangdong, which is the richest. Such a sub-province can't stand it and has to start from the income of civil servants. It can be seen how much pressure local finances. This news has been confirmed by many parties. After I tweeted this picture, many netizens in Jiangsu confirmed the news. Moreover, netizens in Shanghai added that Shanghai, as the richest region in China, has actually withdrawn performance awards. Ordinary people may not know about performance bonuses. It is the largest income of local civil servants. For example, this so-called performance bonus is a bit like a maintenance joint venture in the Manchu Qing dynasty. That is, the government formulates some work goals that can definitely be achieved, and then find a reason to pay the bonus for itself. Because in China, everyone knows that the basic salary of civil servants is level 27 according to the regulations, and the whole country is much the same. So the income gap of civil servants in various places is mainly reflected in the performance awards. When I was in the system, the performance bonus of Guangzhou civil servants accounted for about 40% of the salary income. The more economically good the area, the greater the proportion of this part's income. Now we should not only cut this piece, but also spit out the income of the past 2 years. Well, you can see how embarrassed the local finances are. As we all know, a large part of China's local finances have been obtained by selling land these years. The so-called land finance can be held when there was no real estate problem in the past few years. Now real estate is booming. Houses can't be sold, and land blue can't be sold. Therefore, local financial distress is not difficult to imagine. So what signs of social contradictions can we see about the salary reduction of civil servants? There is an iron law in Chinese history, that is, the end of the dynasty in history, which began with the collapse of finance. The plot we are very familiar with is that the people don't talk about the tax source of the court, and the income is not enough. Therefore, we can only continue to raise taxes and increase violently. As a result, social contradictions intensify. Farmers, the imperial society in ancient China. The fundamental reason why it falls into this dead circle is that the cost of imperial rule is very high. It needs to control all kinds of social resources and support the huge bureaucracy and army to maintain the rule. Once the financial requirements of maintaining rule are not met, there will be chaos. There is a historical knowledge point that no one knows, that we are indoctrinated every day, but it is actually not rigorous. In the uprisings in Chinese history, farmers are indeed the main body, but ordinary farmers themselves have limited cultural vision due to class restrictions. So in the end, they became bigger and stronger, and the leaders of the uprisings are basically not farmers. I read an article a few days ago, The Career Survey of Leaders of Ancient Peasant Uprisings, written by a reporter from New Weekly. Tang Yuanpeng analyzed the 12 major uprisings affecting the whole country in China since Chen Shengwuduang II. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Among them, the occupations of 35 uprising leaders are recorded in history books. They have businessmen, mountain thieves, civil servants, religious leaders, farmers, etc. But can you guess which of these categories has the most occupations? I don't think you can guess that the professions with the most rebellion are civil servants. Among the 35 leaders of the ancient peasant uprisings, 10 people were at the bottom, accounting for almost 30%. That is to say, one of the 3 rebellion leaders is a civil servant, such as the famous Liu Bang, who used to be chief pavilion and the lowest level civil servant of the Qin dynasty. He is equivalent to Zhai, the founder of the wagon army in the Tang dynasty, a township head. He made him the French dynasty. In Dongjian County, equivalent to a civil servant of the Justice Bureau, Liu Botong, the leader of the Red Turban Army at the end of the Yuan dynasty. He is an inspector of the Yuan dynasty. Equivalent to a director of today's police station, competing with Zhu Yuan's Hangfor Chen Yaoying. He used to be a small official in the county, as well as Li Zicheng, an official postman and so on. Therefore, in China's history, the bottom civil service group is the real largest rebel group. So the question is, why did these low-level civil servants rebel? The reason why senior civil servants are not easy to rebel is relatively easy to understand. Because it is a ruling class, vested interests maintain the rule of the court, that is, to defend their own rule. Therefore, in most cases, senior civil servants have no motivation to rebel, and the lower civil servants are different. Although in the opinion of people outside the system, civil servants do not seem to be any different. They are all counterfeits. In fact, the Zhao family is also divided into several types. Let me give you an example. For example, in the past, in my government office, there were 4 people with 4 identities. One is civil servants and the other is a career editor. The third is the editorial. The fourth is the contract system. These 4 types of people eat financial meals. But the benefits are very different. Civil servants are better than institutional editors than work editors. The definition of public service is better than the 4 identities of the contract system, which is very clear and difficult to cross. Even the status of civil servants is the difference between each other. I once accompanied a leader to the Environmental Protection Bureau to inspect. During the gossip, I talked to the Environmental Protection Bureau. 2 people have retired. They hope that the leader will solve the treatment for them. These 2 people, who have worked as civil servants all their lives, have always been the lowest level clerks. Therefore, when they retire, they hope that the leaders will punish compassion and give them a deputy department. This leader was very surprised. He said that after working all his life, why didn't your Environmental Protection Bureau solve the treatment of a deputy department? The leader of the Environmental Protection Bureau replied, saying that no, I don't want to give it, but because the Environmental Protection Bureau is a small unit, the treatment of the deputy department is very limited and can't give it. This is true. Therefore, many low-level civil servants have no rights and no additional benefits for a lifetime of obscurity. Strictly speaking, it is also a squeezed group of tool people who say that what's better is the edge of home creation. People say it's a little audible, but it may not be as good as a dog that builds a family. Therefore, their loyalty to the system is far lower than that of senior officials. Once he encounters the great turmoil in society and is abandoned and threatened by the court in turn, he is more likely to stand up and rebel. And because of their understanding of the system and the bottom, the threat after their rebellion is even greater. For example, Li Zicheng, who turned out to be a Yi nationality in Yinchuan Station, was a small civil servant responsible for transmitting official documents. In ancient times, the main function of the post station was to transmit official documents and send them to them, which can be regarded as the establishment of civil servants. However, when the Ming dynasty came to Chongzhen, this war broke out frequently, and Chongzhen's finances were tight. He had no choice but to cut civil servants first to cut the post station. Li Zicheng lost his job because of this. In the end, he had no choice but to rebel. In the end, it was Li Zicheng, an unemployed low-level civil servant, who sent Chongzhen to the crooked neck tree in Mishan. What do you think? In fact, every imperial or centralized system seems to be particularly powerful, with countless present government officials. But they are not monolithic, especially when the end of finance is not enough to support the operation of the country. His collapse is often the strength of the dictator starting from some internal details, which is based on the fact that he still has certain resources to control and use, not the loyalty of the so-called slaves. When these resources do not exist, or there is a crisis, the so-called loyalty will destroy the slaves sooner or later. Sooner or later, they will bite back. So I often encourage everyone to have confidence in the future, because when some familiar history begins to reincarnate, it shows that history has entered the cycle rate, which no one can escape. We can't predict specific times and events, but we can be sure that something will happen sooner or later. When he is far ahead, then his demise must also be far ahead.